Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of our Diverse Educators event. In part 1, we reflected on diverse children. In part 2, it was diverse curriculum. And now we're moving on to consider diverse staff. We are delighted to be joined by 5 brilliant speakers. We have Abena Akuffo-Kelly, who is Head of Computing and ICT. We have Javay Welter, an MFL teacher. We have Lily, is it Bande or Band? I'm not sure how to say your last name, Lily Bande, who is a PSHE lead teacher and a counsellor. And we have Yamina Bibi, who is an assistant head teacher. And our partner speaker for this section is the lovely Tasha Fletcher, who is an international teacher who is representing Teaglo. So thank you for joining us to talk about diverse. If you unmute yourself, Abena, and dive right in.
Okay, who am I? I'm a woman, that is quite evident. I'm a cisgendered woman. I am Black. These two mutable facts mean that many people have a predisposed opinion of who I am before I even open my mouth. These facts also mean that I have certain privileges and also limitations in the way that I can navigate the world. These facts impact on the spaces I'm allowed to cohabit, my experiences, my joys, and my challenges. I'm British and grew up in a Ghanaian household, so I suppose you can say that my cultural identity is British with an African Ghanaian flavour. That's different from being British with a Nigerian, Jamaican, Eritrean, etc. flavour. We all come from the African diaspora, but we're all Black, but our experiences are more nuanced than that. I'm a mother, I'm a teacher. More specifically, I'm a teacher of computer science. In traditional categorizations of class, some might say that makes me middle class. I'm a feminist. So again, who am I? I'm a Black, cisgendered, Ghanaian, British woman, a mother, a teacher of computer science, part of the middle classes, question mark there, a feminist. Is that it? Is that who I am in a nutshell? No, there is more. There are many implicit hidden aspects of my character. You wouldn't immediately deduce that I currently have an extremely unhealthy obsession with watching Channel 4's Extreme Cakes on Netflix, and that I dedicated last night to watching the longer-awaited 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery. These multiple identities are not discrete. They are not in isolation. They overlap like a Venn diagram with multiple circles, each of these circles representing a different facet of my lived experience. These circles bleed into each other. They intersect. Kimberly Crenshaw, an American law professor, civil rights activist, and scholar, coined the word intersectionality in 1989. As Wiki says, quote, intersectionality is a theoretical framework for understanding how aspects of a person's social and political identity, e.g. gender, caste, sex, race, class, sexuality, religion, disability, physical appearance, height, for example, combine to create different modes of discrimination and privilege, unquote. Intersectionality is the frame in which I experience varying degrees of privilege and oppression within a dominant Western discourse. I do not exist in a vacuum. I cannot divorce myself from my constituent parts and talk about an isolated section of my identity. My thoughts and my actions are a culmination of all of my experiences. Intersectionality weaves through my life on a daily basis. I'm a counsellor and a labour activist. Today, my fellow counsellors are involved in a welcoming event for asylum-seeking refugees who have been housed in local army barracks. There will be a police presence, and there is also talk of the attendance of far-right groups. I stand in solidarity with my colleagues, but I will not be there. First and foremost, because I'd already agreed to talk at this event. But even if I was not at this meeting, I would have been unlikely to attend. As a mother, I do not wish to possibly endanger my child. The intention is for a peaceful event, but that may not be the actual reality. As a teacher, I'm exhausted from a week of teaching and trying to do my best, irrespective of the additional measures that I have to carry out due to COVID. As a woman, I admit that I'm intimidated by the likelihood of being in a crowd and being jostled. As a Black person, I feared that slurs may be targeted my way. You see, my Labour colleagues are all white. They intersect in many other categories, but their whiteness means that although we will be standing there in solidarity, we will be in different spaces. I, as a Black person, will be the ultimate object of hate. And today I reserve the right to be cushioned by this event and by what I know is a community of like-minded, inclusive people. But intersectionality, equality, inclusiveness, and diversity are not purely amorphous concepts. Diversity does have a positive impact. Some of the countries that have been praised for their handling of the pandemic have female premiers, such as New Zealand, Norway, and Germany. In addition, some software companies or actively seek neurodiverse individuals as they think outside the box and therefore can come up with innovative ideas. Arguably, the evidence is anecdotal. There may be many other extenuating circumstances for their success, but there are many studies that show that our diverse staff do not just offer a wider spectrum of thought and experiences, but also have the advantage of increased productivity and profitability. A report by McKinsey and Company say that companies with more culturally and ethnically diverse executive teams were 33% more likely to see better than average profits. At board of director level, more ethically and culturally diverse companies were 43% more likely to see above average profits. Another study found that a 30% increase in the female representation in leadership led to 15% increase in profitability for a typical company. The consideration of intersectionality in the recruitment of staff is not just an act of redressing the balance, but it makes economic sense. Thank you for listening.
Wow, Abena, that was a powerful opening. Thank you so much. I was so intent on listening, I actually forgot who was going to be after you. It's Javay. Thank you. Intersectionality. We'll come back to that in the questions, I'm sure. Over to you, Javay.
Thank you very much, Anna. Good morning, all. I'm Javay Welter, and I teach modern foreign languages in a large school in Birmingham. Thank you, Anna, for this opportunity. My focus is on diverse men in teaching, and I'll draw on my experiences and focus on the benefits of Black male teachers. The Department for Education highlighted that Black male teachers make 0.7% of teachers in England. 0.7. Remember that number? This is a phenomenal discussion, and it needs to be heard. All pupils can benefit from having Black teachers. Their impact can be felt for generations. I remember vividly my Black teachers, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Bartley, Mrs. Graham, and this had a powerful and positive impact on my life. I could see what I wanted to be, and this was very empowering. I believed that it was possible to aspire, dream big, and also be a teacher. I became a teacher from being an EAL learner. That is very important. I believe that many of the lessons that Black male teachers bring to the classroom go far beyond academic content and pedagogy. It can be life-changing. Black men can inspire all pupils, especially Black boys and Black girls. The unique lived experience can create a rich curriculum, which can contribute to pupil success in school, which cannot be graded or quantified easily. Schools need to pay attention to this. Schools need to understand that their presence cannot be graded and their influence is very important. As a teacher myself, I've got a very powerful influence on my pupils and an impact. And this challenged my pupils' stereotypes as well as prejudice or biases they may have towards me. And they also see Black males also in a positive light, which is very important. My wife, who is an assistant head, went through a whole schooling without having a Black teacher. And we are in the 21st century now. So we need to ask ourselves, are we preparing our pupils for the real world? Representation matters and is very important. Imagine the benefit of having more Black males in school, the social benefits, the academic benefits, and the economical benefits for society. But we need to ask ourselves, are we doing enough? Are schools inclusive? And one thing I like to say is some schools in England have never employed a Black male in their history as a teacher or mentor or TA. A solution could be that head teachers, CEOs, or even governors, what they could do, they need to ask themselves, are their schools diverse? Are they truly a reflection of the population or even the world? And are they recruiting quality Black male teachers? And why not? That is very important. I do not believe in tokenism, by the way. However, I believe in potential. I believe that Black males got great potential and they need to be given opportunities. For example, they've had to overcome great odds to go to university, then teaching practice, and now they're working in the most challenging schools. So it shows they got great character and they can advise pupils on how to overcome social issues, especially. Importantly, our head teachers are identifying and recruiting as well as training Black male teachers or females to be future leaders. Are they doing that? We need successional planning. We need successional leadership. If you're a leader right now, are you training any black males? You have to ask yourself that question. And why not? We need to ask these important questions. However, it's uncomfortable, I understand. And also, are schools doing enough to re-engage disaffected or disengaged pupils? Have they tried all avenues? Have they brought in black mentors or organization or black teachers? We need to ask these things. We are talking about decolonizing the curriculum at the present. However, I also believe we need a national initiative to recruit more black males, just like the government introduced a £40,000 bursary to recruit in the armed forces. We need to put a priority also on the most vulnerable groups. That is essential. Are the government doing enough to recruit black male teachers? We need to ask ourselves this. Martin Luther King highlighted a very important point. He mentioned that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So are you contributing to that injustice in your school? We need to ask this question. To conclude, the impact of black male teachers is immeasurable. It cannot be measured. Finally, aspire to make a difference. Everyone watching this, try and become a teacher or involved in education. Be the change you want to see, because no one else will do it for you. We need a collective approach. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Javay. There's lots of comments about you being the only male speaker today, and I just want to say we do actively try and recruit more men into this space, and our diverse ed events are female heavy. Every conversation I sit in around diversity is female heavy. Let's get more men involved in these conversations, please, and do let us know if you can recommend a great male speaker about diversity, equity and inclusion. Next speaker then, Lily, over to you, please.
Thank you, Hannah. So I'm here to talk about challenging discrimination and inequality in our schools. And the question is why? Well, sometimes the situation may not seem right. It will be inappropriate. There are racial comments, racist comments, homophobic comments, playing just in front of you. And the problem is these racist bullies and homophobes, they're more likely to think their behavior is normal or acceptable if no one confronts it. So what we need to do is to ensure we challenge that. And how do we do that is the question. We need to be active bystanders. Today, I just want people to know that every time, wherever you are, you need to be clear of, okay, where am I? Be aware of your surroundings, what's happening, and be able to see that, okay, this is a problem. And then say, what do I do about it? So you need to be able to educate yourself. And when you educate yourself, you have a solution. So be part of the solution. And then act swiftly, challenge the problems. So 5 points, be an active bystander. So how do you educate yourself is the question. You need to know your rights. Equality Act of 2010, do you know it? You need to know that. You need to know the 9 protected characteristics of equality. You need to know your staff handbook, school policies and procedures. Does your school comply with the LGBT Action Plan of 2018? Does your school comply with the Disability Confident Committed? You need to know this. You need to equip yourself. The law is on your side. But if you don't know, you can't argue, you can't confront discrimination and inequality in your schools. It's time for change. Change is needed. Why is it needed? I'll read you something. The NASUW2 and the Runnymede Trust produced an influential publication called Visible Minorities, Invisible Teachers in 2017. It's a very powerful piece to read. This research revealed both the overt and covert ways that BME teachers experience racism and discrimination in their everyday working lives. That is said, everyday working lives. The report highlighted how pervasive and persistent racism is within the British education system, affecting BME teachers' morale and long-term career aspirations. No wonder we only have 1% of head teachers who are Black. It says a lot. So it's time for change. What we need to do, we need to ensure that we are joining all the EDI initiatives that are happening. If it's not there in your school, well, you propose it. We need to work in our groups, have professional partnerships. We need to ensure that we are challenging inequality. If the policies are not fit for purpose, you need to tell HR. They will look into it, but well, if it's something to do with law, they might need to get hold of their lawyers. But you really need to be in the know-how. Family policies, look at them. They can have maternity and paternity leave, something very important for women of probably getting to a certain age, menopause. Do you have a menopause policy in your school? We need to look into that. You need to join the teachers' union. You need to have a trail of evidence. If you think you're not being treated fairly, there's discrimination, have a trail of evidence. You need a diary. Log on everything. If you have an informal meeting, so-called informal meeting, follow it up with an email. Protect yourself. Know your grievance procedures, the report system. We need to be allies. We need to stand for those who are not having it fair, who are discriminated against. Representation matters. We need to have diverse voices.
Lily, can I stop you there, darling? Thank you so much. Could you just sum up your last sentence for me?
Yeah, diversity. We need diverse voices at each level. That's my last sentence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you for those practical steps and about empowering ourselves by actually knowing the policies and the law. And quite a few people in the comments are asking for the links to some of those reports. So if you give them to me, I can send them out to everybody following the event. So thank you so much. That leads us on nicely to Yamina. Yamina, please unmute yourself and dive in.
Morning, everyone. So whenever I go out, I think about my outfit, which color scarf is going to suit the outfit, the perfect handbag that will enhance that outfit, of course. The handbag might be large or small. It might have many compartments, or it just might have the one for my phone and purse, of course. My handbags change according to whatever it is that I've decided to put on that day to suit that occasion. Sometimes it feels like some organizations treat diversity and inclusion like it's a handbag, picking and choosing the one that enhances their outfit for that occasion. Do we just pick the protected characteristic that suits us for that day, for that week, for that event? Or are we true inclusive allies for every community we say we represent? Are we committed to anti-discriminatory work in order to be the inclusive allies that we say we are? If so, how evident is this in every sphere of our organization? As a visibly Muslim female leader, I have experienced workplaces where I have been one of a few Muslim women being represented at middle and senior leadership level. I have known organizations where SOT are made up of male and female heterosexual white leaders who claim to be inclusive allies, but each time there's a senior leadership role, it's the same person or same type of person that's represented and gets the job. Can we call ourselves truly inclusive allies if our leadership teams do not reflect the staff and students we lead and represent? Can we be allies if we do not stand shoulder to shoulder with all marginalized groups and communities and actively ensure their voices are heard and represented? Can we call ourselves inclusive allies if we only stand and advocate for the rights of one community over the rights of others? A few years ago, I realized the importance of inclusive allyship in the workplace when I had wonderful white allies advocating for my voice to be heard as a visibly Muslim British woman. I noticed its power when I had colleagues from different communities, such as the LGBT+ community, standing shoulder to shoulder with me and others from my community when I spoke about the Islamophobia and racism I'd faced. The way that I felt as a British Muslim woman in the workplace. I also noticed the power of inclusive allyship when I stood and spoke to my students at an assembly for LGBT Week, alongside my colleague Nick Bentley from LGBT Ed, about the power of intersectional and inclusive allyship. When a BAME student came to me and disclosed that they'd identified as non-binary, or all the other times students have disclosed that they are part of the LGBTQ community, for me, that told me that my presence there was powerful. And I realized then that the power of representation and inclusive allyship lied within me, that I could actually do something. We cannot underestimate the power of representation and the power of being allies, because in doing so, our staff and students are taught who they are matters, that they can bring their authentic selves to school and work, and that there is someone there who will recognize and advocate for them, regardless of whether they are from the same community or not. I am very aware that my current workplace, Forest Gate Community School, where my head teacher is a visibly Muslim woman, where the majority of our SLT is made up of BAME leaders, LGBTQ plus leaders and mothers, is different, but it shouldn't be. It should be usualized. It should be the norm if we say we are dedicated to diversity and inclusion. As a result of the diversity of my school, I'm no longer afraid to show up as my authentic self, because I know I've got allies who support and advocate for me, for my voice, in the same way that I look too enthusiastic about this, but in the same way that I look to positively promote others from diverse backgrounds as a leader to ensure that diversity, inclusion, and representation are not just words on our school wall or our school development plan, but they are lived by each and every single one of us. Yes, we've got work to do. Of course we do. But it shouldn't be different. So we must actively promote and be held accountable for our anti-discriminatory work. So what can we do to ensure that allyship is not just another handbag we pick up when it matches our outfit? Number one, schools should provide coaching for all members of marginalized groups. Make that a priority so that they feel that they are being developed. I've benefited from it personally through BAME Ed and Women Ed. I want every organization and every community leader to benefit from that too. Partake actively in anti-discriminatory work to ensure that and provide unconscious bias training for all staff regularly. Again, it's not just a handbag we pick and choose when it suits us. It should be a regular thing so that we are checking our own biases. And three, provide opportunities for underrepresented people from underrepresented groups to be seen and heard through assemblies, through events. Do not attend an event that has manuals only, please. And think about the curriculum. It's already been said in the previous panel, which was fantastic, by the way. But think about the curriculum and the way in which it represents every member of our community, especially marginalized groups. It is really important that we're celebrating success and not just reiterating the horrors of the past experiences that we've faced. We want to celebrate excellence in all of our communities. Thank you very much.
Wow, Yamina, your notifications are going off, just to warn you, okay? You're getting a lot of love, and I know you were super nervous. Powerful, and the analogy, the metaphor's really, really strong there about the kind of the commitment to the work. And I think picking up from what Lily said about being upstanders, not bystanders, really, really, really powerful. Thank you so much. Last but not least then, the lovely Tasha. And let's see what your line's like today. And tell everyone where in the world you are, Tash, before you start talking as well.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Tasha and I am coming to you all live from Tajikistan right now. So it's afternoon for me, and good morning to you all, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good night, good afternoon. So today I'm here to talk about finding your voice, and I think it's quite fitting as well, seeing that I'm in Tajikistan and we're talking about diversity and cultural inclusion. As I sit here, I'm reminded of this intercultural understanding by looking directly in front of me of our school ethos. And it says that DIS encourages its community to quest, discover, and embrace the similarities and differences between cultures and nationalities to promote meaningful and lasting understanding and respect. And for me, that says a lot about who I am and where I want to be as a person, where I want to work. And I also think it is also a place for me to broaden my voice even more. When I was asked to do this by Teaglo, who is my sponsor here today, I was first a bit nervous on talking about finding my voice, because although I'm naturally loud, it's not something that I would do very often. Of course, I do stand for my own rights, and I stand up against injustices and unethical practices in the workforce. This year in Poland, at the end of the school year, I was involved in a very dramatic leave from work, which had me stepping down because of unethical work practices. But being my father's daughter, I am a strong woman, and I will continue to stand like that. Which leads me on to why I am here and talking about finding your voice. And it's all because of the lovely Hannah. I know I couldn't have done it without her. I attended one of Hannah's I Am Remarkable workshop, and it was from then on I knew that I should stand proud of my achievements, stand proud of who I am, and not let what has happened to me because of other people's opinion stop me from moving forward as a Black educator, as a mother, as a woman leader, and also as an international teacher. I've always been an international teacher for the past 11 years now, 18 years in education, and all of them has always been in very not so popular countries, I might say. Being here in Tajikistan is testimony of that. But I would like to, the message that I would like to send out to other women, male as well, to people of diversity out there, and people who are welcoming inclusion and diverse education in their schools and in their communities, that we cannot just sit down and wait for things to happen. We actually have to stand up now. There is no better time than now for us to do what we are supposed to do. Because if we don't start now, we will always be going backward, 1 step forward, 5 steps back. I saw something very interesting on LinkedIn the other day, where someone was talking about STEM and the importance that STEM is being put in, that, and the importance of STEM being placed in the curriculum for the future. But that person also mentioned, what about humanities? Because without humanities in our schools, then we are losing our culture, we are losing our history, we are taking all of these things away from our children, from our future leaders. And it is like Bob Marley also said, people without a past history and culture have no future. We have no future if we cannot remember our past. We do not want to remember our past for us to keep, oh, woe is me. That's not why we want to remember our past. We must remember our past so that we can have a future. So stand proud, let your voices be heard as educators, as mothers, as female leaders, as male leaders, and like Javay said, as Black male educators. We also want to see much more of them in our workforce. Our workforce cannot be diverse without the very presence of a diverse leadership, and it comes from males and females, which must push each other on. So thank you all very much, and thank you to Teaglo once again for including me in this session. Thank you.
Thank you. That was incredibly powerful. And thank you for joining us from so far afield. We know that diversity is a global conversation. And I think we're demonstrating here that actually that's definitely true. And the commitment is appreciated. We've got lots of really positive comments in the chat, and lots of really appreciative voices. And a few questions have come through. So I'm going to start with, Abena, can I start with you? Because there was a question about being role models. So, you know, you often find if you are a person of colour or you represent the LGBT community, that you are the pioneer, you're the role model. How can we be role models without exhausting ourselves? How do we manage that balance? Because it can feel like a massive emotional burden. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I mean, my partner is always going on at me about the fact that I say yes to everything. So every single weekend, there's always something on. I'm either protesting, I've got a meeting, I've got this, I've got that, because I see that it's so important. I know, as Yamina said, that you need to represent. If people do not see Black people, if they do not see Black males, if they do not see Muslim people, if they don't see LGBT people, they think they don't exist. They really think they don't exist. And the children specifically will think, oh, so the only thing that I can aspire to is to be a cleaner. The only thing I can aspire to is to do what, Black people are supposed to do, which is to be in sport or to be in music. I think, obviously, you as yourself have to be a role model, but again, as Yamina said, we need allies as well. So if you bring those allies into the conversation as well, it doesn't always have to be you that's speaking out for the Black people, that's speaking up for the women, that's speaking up, because you have these allies who are educated allies, all these people who are watching Diverse Ed today. Not all of them will intersect some of these oppressed groups. They can be our allies, they can be our voices as well, because it is tiring. It is very tiring having to speak, having to be that monolith for Black people, or the monolith for women.
Absolutely, and certainly, when you have that intersectional identity, you can often feel yourself juggling quite a few of those battles. And on that note, actually, Javay, if I could come to you for a moment, we talk about the absence of Black men in education, in particular early years. Can you add anything to this conversation about being the pioneer, where we can get support if you are in that minority group leading the charge, if you like?
Brilliant question. There's a lot of ways in which we can help. I will say, firstly, we need to look at the staff that we've got. I know that schools are doing what is easy, but we have to do what is right as well for our pupils. If we really care about humanity and society, I believe we need to also headhunt. So look for applicants who have the right characteristics or who got the potential to be a future leader. And I believe that there's a lot of future leaders out there. However, the schools are not necessarily looking for them, if you know what I'm saying. They're looking for someone in their image. So I believe we also need to look at the potential of diversity. How could it add to your school? The benefits. Think about it. Some of the knowledge I've got, I know that some other staff may not have it. So we need to also be aware of the culture, but also we need to teacher training. We need to have more graduates. We need more people to graduate from, obviously, Black males to graduate from universities. And then we need teacher training to give them opportunities. Because if I tell you my struggles, how many teaching applications I had to do to get into teaching university, it's several. I can't really talk about it, but you've got to apply over, let's say, 30 times to get onto a teaching course or a school, and you're not getting no feedback, and they keep saying no, and they keep saying you're not experienced. There's a lot of barriers out there just to become a teacher. For us to become teachers, the barriers are so huge. I could write a book about it. Ask anyone. So just to get into teaching is very hard, and we need that support from allies, and also we need that for our pupils, because if our pupils are not getting those GCSEs and then they're graduating, how are they going to get into teaching? It's so tough, and the diversity reflects it. 97% of males are white males. That shows you that how hard it is to get into teaching for a Black male.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And that pipeline is incredibly important. We need to think about it on a much broader scale than just about kind of at the end where there's teachers trying to represent whole groups of people. And we talked a little bit about in that the kind of the onus on recruiters to try to make sure that their staff bodies are diverse. And Lily, I wonder if I could come to you here. You mentioned governors. What role do governors play in this? How can governors contribute to creating that diverse workforce? What responsibilities do they have?
Thank you. I think governors actually, the face of the governors itself should be diverse. The problem is you would have governors, a board of governors where it's not diverse. So if you don't have a diverse group of governors, how are you going to ensure that there is diversity is being challenged, that students are just not being excluded without looking into why we have a pattern of certain pupils from certain groups of our communities being excluded? So when you have a diverse group of governors, they will, because governors can actually bring head teachers to account. So we need to ensure that we have diverse head teachers and diverse governors. Everything, like I said, we need to have a voice of diversity at each level. So from the LSAs, learning support assistants, up to the governors of the school. Have I answered your question?
Absolutely. No, I think it's incredibly important. There's lots of comments about responsibilities for governance, and Hannah's posted a bit of information about diverse ed and governance. So you can see that in the comments for you. We've had a question about collating examples of successful BAME leaders. Yamina, if I could come to you for a moment, as a successful BAME leader, where does one go about finding these role models, not just in schools, but are there places and people that we can go to try and create that bank of positive role models?
Absolutely. There's so much out there. And I will say, for me, Twitter was transformational for my leadership and the way what I was looking for, what I was seeking. And Women Ed, I know one of the campaigns for Women Ed, for example, I'm a Women Ed network lead. We've got a campaign of ensuring there's representation of BAME colleagues and BAME women specifically, but also BAME Ed. So they've got a list of speakers. You can go on their website and there's a list of phenomenal speakers. I mean, I'm one of them. I'm not one of those phenomenal ones, but there's lots of other phenomenal speakers out there who you can get coached from. And BAME Ed actually provide free coaching. So I've just recommended, funny enough, this morning I just recommended a BAME Ed coach to one of the colleagues who asked me. But Women Ed also provide coaching. There's so much out there, so many of us out there. I think because we can't see it, we think they're not there. And actual fact, if you come to my school, for example, we're everywhere. Diversity does exist. It's about providing opportunities for those colleagues. And for me, it's about sponsoring. So how are we sponsoring, for example, Black female staff and Black male staff to be able to have positions in leadership? Are we providing, the pathways and the opportunities? Are we taking them along and saying, here's what, SLT groups look like? What are we doing to provide those opportunities for our colleagues and from marginalized groups? Who aren't represented in our leadership, because leadership is where it starts. We've got to be strategic. If we want it has to be at every level. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you absolutely have, and certainly those recommendations are incredibly important. Again, the links are in the comments. The BAME Ed Speakers Directory is a really invaluable resource. So if you are struggling to find people who can come into schools or can train staff, you've got a resource there. I want to pick up the point about coaching, because I think coaching is an integral part of creating leaders. And I wonder if, Tasha, here you could speak to us about this, because you said you had difficult circumstances and you left a place due to unethical practices, and I don't need you to go into the details. But what role could coaching have played? And is that it's something important when we think about representation and growing diverse leaders and diverse staff members? I think we may have lost our connection to Tasha. I'm going to throw this open to the floor until we get her back. Just raise your hand if you think that you can speak to that. So I was talking about coaching. Okay, Javay, do you want to go for it? And if we've got time, we'll go to you, Lily.
Thank you. Coaching is paramount. Coaching obviously enables you to get to the next level, evolution. Everyone needs to evolve. What's the point of one person evolving and the rest staying behind? So I believe that we need to coach our Black males and females, or even people from our global majority. So all backgrounds need coaching there is no, if you're caring about people's success, you've got to care about your staff as well and coach them. But before you get into coaching, you need to also focus on also retaining them as well. There's a lack of retention. We say, okay, we employed one black girl and that's it. That's not enough. It has to be a lifelong thing, not lip service or a race audit. We need a lifelong commitment for our future generations which are coming up now. So I believe it's a lifelong coaching, not just a one-off CPD. That's not enough.
Fantastic. Thank you, Javay. We've got Tasha back. Tasha, did you hear the question or shall I repeat it?
Yes, I did hear the question. Of
Brilliant.
course, being at the other side of the world has its positives and negatives, but here we are, so thankfully. Okay, yeah, so I do agree that coaching has a lot to do with the positivity and hearing and raising your voice, finding your voice out there, because for me, my breakthrough moment was when I attended that I Am Remarkable workshop. It really, really, really gave me an aha moment and made me realize that sometimes all of the negativities that we can have outside or surrounding us in our workplace, in our home environment, or just normally passing people on the street, it does not have to define who you are. It's not what people call you, but it's what you answer to. And there are so much things that we have going for ourselves. And of course, it's not bragging if it's backed up by facts, isn't it? So we have all of these wonderful things coming from coaching, and I would advise anyone to please find a mentor that is positive for you, or who is in your field, or of course head on to one of the I Am Remarkable workshops. And as Yamina was saying as well, we have Women Ed as well. I recently spoke at one of our Women Ed unconference the other day, which was also mind-blowing for me on finding my voice. So coaching, I think, is, or I firmly believe so, not think, I believe that it plays a very, very big part of who you are and can develop into who we are in this world, and the part that we all have to play in supporting each other and helping us to grow.
Thank you, Tasha, for that. Lily, did you have something to add on that? I saw you wave your hand.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add on to say, with the coaching goes hand in hand with mentoring. I can actually advise people that you can ask your employers to have a mentor. That will empower you. And mentoring at the moment, there is the reverse program mentoring. I don't know whether people have heard of that, where you have the mentor becoming the mentee. That actually opens doors for both the mentor and the mentee. So I would actually say mentoring is very important. And for that to happen, there is need for schools to actually review everything, their systems, to ensure that in systems can actually support that, the coaching and the mentoring. That's what I wanted to add in. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. And just a final point, Yamina, I was going to ask you a question, but did you have a response to that as well?
I was just going to say, I think it's so important for schools to provide that coaching. In the schools that I've worked in and in the current school that I'm working in, we're actually providing that coaching program. It's going to be embedded in my current school. We're going rolling it out, and we've trained coaches, and then they're going to be deployed so that all members of staff are provided with that coaching. Nobody should have to pay for coaching, is my belief. We should be able to provide that as a school, and I think it's really important that we do that.
Absolutely. The question I was going to ask you, and it's come up a couple of times in the comments, is about allyship. And you talked about your work being an ally for the LGBT movement and working with Nick Bentley. And the question from Jane is, what steps should we be taking to become those allies, particularly when we're talking about LGBT issues? Because I think people consider, especially globally, to be kind of a thornier issue to deal with. Maybe talk to us about your experience and the process you've been through.
I think it was about educating myself, and it was a diverse ed event. I think it was Sean Delaney, and I attended his diverse ed event. It was brilliant because he talked about it from human rights perspective, And that was really transformational for me. And it was about education. For me, it was about educating myself, because I didn't know much about it, to be honest. And I've got to be really honest about my ignorance. So I educated myself. I spoke to my colleagues who are part of the LGBTQ community, asked what I could do, and talked about how, and I know that my role here is really powerful. I'm very aware of that. And actually being aware of the power that we have as individuals to represent all marginalized communities, including the LGBTQ plus community, because that intersectionality doesn't go away, and a lot of our students aren't represented in those forums, and they're not represented in schools. And are we educating ourselves to take those steps forward? Definitely, speak to colleagues in schools, educate ourselves. There's so much out there now. LGBT Ed is doing fantastic work alongside, Women Ed, BAME Ed, and Disability Ed, all these organizations, which I remember being launched at the first Diverse Ed conference, and it was one of the most transformational events I ever attended, and it still stays with me. And I went with Nick, and I went with a couple of my other colleagues, and yeah, it's definitely changed my practice and the way in which I do things and I lead, I hope.
Thank you, and you certainly do. Right, over to you, Hannah, to wrap us up.
Thank you, everyone. Amazing input. Great questions, Benny, and responses. Thank you so much. We've covered quite a lot in 40 minutes. I just wanted to spotlight some of our diverse ed partnerships, because we see ourselves as like the glue to join up some of the dots of the things that are happening. And there's lots of comments about the top of the system and the bottom of the system. So if we think about governors, first of all, we are working collaboratively with all of the key stakeholder organisations to put together a series of webinars, totally free, to tackle not only governance, but also trustee boards, because we know that it gets whiter and maler the more senior we get. So there's a piece of work there where we're all working together. Similarly to that, we're working with Nazbit and Yuset about ITTE. There's some interesting comments coming through, to your point, Javay, about we know that we have a disproportionate number of Black men applying for ITTE to who's been offered places. So yes, we've got a gap in the pipeline of the applicants not there, but when they do apply, they don't get the offers either. But Nazbit and Yuset are working really intentionally with us on that. And read the questions about coaching and mentoring. So the DFE did put some money into the system. There were the equalities grants. There was the free coaching pledge. A lot of that work's now on pause due to the funding cuts. But Collective Ed, who are one of the centres from Leeds Beckett University for coaching and mentoring, they are filling that space. So if you're interested in networking with coaches and mentors in particular, I've popped the link into the chat. Please check out Collective Ed. And Benny and I are doing a webinar with them, I think it's now in January, thinking about diversifying coaching and mentoring spaces. So just lots of dots being joined up there. So fantastic. Thank you very much, panel 3. Let's go to a break. Toilet, tea, lie down, go check your notifications, and we'll see you for the final part at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.